The massive alien ships appeared over Earth without warning. 12 enormous vessels, each one bigger than any city humans had ever built. They hung in the sky like dark clouds, blocking out the sun over major capitals around the world. Sarah. Chen stood at the window of the United Earth Assembly Building, watching the shadows fall across New York. As Earth's top military commander, she had seen many threats, but nothing like this. The alien ships were so large that her mind struggled to understand their size. "Admiral Chen, they're requesting to speak with our leaders," said Lieutenant Torres, running into the room with a data pad. His face was pale with fear. Sarah turned away from the window. "Tell them we'll meet in the main assembly hall. Get President Vasquez and Diplomat Webb. We need our best people for this." The alien who entered their meeting room was like nothing humans had ever seen. It looked like it was made of living crystal, tall and thin, with light dancing inside its transparent body. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once, like music made of ice. "I am Arbiter Zethkar of the Velthari Empire," the crystal being said. "I speak for the Galactic Council, rulers of this galaxy for over 50,000 of your years. President." Elena Vasquez stepped forward. She was a small woman, but her voice was strong. "Welcome to Earth. I am President Vasquez. We greet you in peace." The crystal alien made a sound that might have been laughter, but it felt cold and mean. "Peace. How interesting that your kind speaks of peace while your planet is covered in weapons." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. Next to her, Diplomat Marcus Webb put a gentle hand on her arm, warning her to stay calm. Zethkar continued, "The Galactic Council has watched your species for some time. We have seen your wars, your violence, your need to destroy each other. This cannot continue. Our wars ended decades ago," President Vasquez said. "We have peace between all Earth nations now. But you still build weapons, you still train soldiers, you still think like warriors." Zethkar's crystal body flashed brighter. "The galaxy has no place for such primitive thinking." The word primitive hit the humans like a slap. Sarah's hands formed fists at her sides, but she stayed silent. Zethkar walked around the room, his crystal feet making no sound on the floor. 12 species rule this galaxy. The Velthari, masters of energy and crystal technology. The Kethvar, who control biological sciences through their hive minds. The Nethys, beings of pure gas who command stellar engineering. The Zephani, who bend electricity to their will. He listed 8 more names, species that controlled different parts of the galaxy. Each one sounded more powerful than the last. All of these species learned to live in peace before they reached the stars, Zethkar said. They put away weapons. They stopped fighting. They became civilized. You humans have not. "What do you want from us?" Webb asked, his diplomat training, keeping his voice steady. Zethkar stopped walking and faced the humans directly. "The Galactic Council has decided. Earth has 30 of your solar cycles to prove it can join civilized society." 30 days, Sarah whispered. "In 30 days, you must do several things. First, you must destroy all military weapons, every gun, every missile, every warship. Second, you must close all military bases and training centers. Third, you must send your soldiers to work as farmers and builders instead." President Vasquez looked shocked. "You want us to have no way to defend ourselves?" "Defend against what?" Zethkar asked. "The Council will protect you just as we protect all civilized species. You will be moved to safe agricultural worlds where you cannot harm others or yourselves." "Moved?" Sarah couldn't stay quiet anymore. "You mean taken from our home?" "Earth will be converted into a nature preserve," Zethkar explained like he was discussing the weather. "Your species will be much happier on worlds designed for your simple needs. Farming, basic crafts, simple lives without the stress of war." The crystal alien turned toward the window, looking out at the city below. "We have done this many times. Before. Species always resist at first, but they learn to be grateful. Violence is a disease that we can cure. And if we refuse? Webb asked. Zethkar's crystal body flashed dark red for a moment. Then you will be pacified by force. The Council's military contains weapons your species cannot imagine. We can turn your sun cold or make your planet's core stop spinning. We can put every human to sleep for 1,000 years while we fix your violent nature. The room fell silent. The humans looked at each other, trying to understand what they were hearing. We have never forced this choice on a species that reached the stars through warfare, Zethkar continued. Most species develop space travel through cooperation and peace. You developed it to build better weapons. This makes you dangerous in ways the Council cannot allow. Sarah thought about humanity's history in space. They had built their first space stations as military outposts. Their ships were designed to carry weapons. Even their peaceful exploration vessels had guns, just in case. You see your space program as exploration, Zethkar said, as if reading her thoughts. The Council sees it as your species preparing for galactic war. That's not true, President. Vasquez protested. We explore to learn, to find new homes, to meet other life. With weapons, Zethkar replied simply. We carry weapons for protection, Sarah said. Space is dangerous. There could be hostile life forms, space pirates, natural disasters. There are no space pirates in Council space. There are no hostile life forms that we do not control. The only danger in this galaxy comes from species like yours. Webb leaned forward. Arbiter Zethkar, surely we can work out some kind of compromise. Perhaps we could reduce our military forces gradually, or place them under Council oversight. The decision has been made, Zethkar said firmly. 30 days, complete disarmament and relocation or pacification. There is no middle ground. The crystal alien began walking toward the door. Council ships will remain in orbit to monitor your compliance. Any attempt to hide weapons or deceive us will be detected immediately. Our sensors can see through any material your species knows how to make. He paused at the doorway. For what it's worth, humans, the Council does not hate your species. We simply cannot allow children to play with fire. Someday, when you have grown beyond your violent nature, you may understand why this is necessary. After Zethkar left, the three humans stood in silence for a long time. Outside the window, the alien ships cast their dark shadows over the city. People in the streets below looked up at the sky with fear and confusion. Well, President Vasquez finally said, I guess we have a decision to make. Sarah looked at her two colleagues, then back at the alien ships. In 30 days, humanity would either surrender everything that made them who they were or face destruction from forces beyond their imagination. But as she watched the massive ships hover motionlessly in the sky, Sarah felt something the crystal alien probably wouldn't understand. It wasn't fear, though fear was there. It wasn't despair, though the situation seemed hopeless. What Sarah felt was the same thing humans had felt for thousands of years when facing impossible odds. The same thing their ancestors felt when standing against larger armies, stronger enemies, and certain death. She felt angry. And in the history of the galaxy, nothing had ever been more dangerous than angry humans with their backs against the wall. The 30-day countdown had begun. The announcement shocked the entire world. President Vasquez stood before the cameras, her face showing defeat and sadness. Her voice shook as she spoke to billions of people watching across Earth and its colonies. My fellow humans, she began, after careful consideration and consultation with world leaders, we have decided to accept the Galactic Council's terms. We cannot fight beings with technology so far beyond our own. Sarah Chen watched the broadcast from her secret command center, deep beneath the Luna military base. Around her, dozens of Earth's top military leaders sat in stunned silence. They knew the truth behind the president's words. Effective immediately, President Vasquez continued on screen. All military operations will begin shutting down. Our weapons will be destroyed under Council supervision. Volunteer evacuation ships will begin taking our people to the agricultural worlds the Council has prepared for us. The camera showed footage of human soldiers laying down their rifles. Military bases around Earth began powering down their defensive systems. Massive cargo ships landed to collect weapons for destruction. To anyone watching, it looked like humanity was giving up without a fight. In orbit above Earth, the Council ships observed everything. Inside the largest vessel, Zethkar and other Council members congratulated themselves on another peaceful conquest. The humans are complying faster than expected, reported Commander Vextar of the insectoid Kethvar. His bug-like eyes watched screens showing Earth's military bases going dark one by one. Their surrender broadcast was quite emotional, added Nethys 7 of Clouds, a being of glowing gas contained in a transparent suit. Their leader seemed genuinely defeated. Zethkar's crystal form pulsed with satisfaction. As expected, when primitive species face superior technology, they always choose survival over pride. The humans will adapt to their new lives as farmers and craftspeople. On Earth, the evacuation appeared to proceed smoothly. Every day, dozens of large ships left Earth's atmosphere, packed with families and their belongings. The ships looked like basic transport vessels, nothing like the sleek warships humans were known for building. Council sensors scanned each departing ship carefully. They detected exactly what they expected to see: civilians, personal belongings, basic life support. Systems. No weapons, no military equipment, no technology that could threaten Council rule. What the Council sensors could not detect was much more interesting. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood in her hidden laboratory beneath Mount Fuji, watching her life's work being loaded onto the next evacuation ship. To any outside observer, the cargo looked like farming equipment and household goods. The Council's sensors confirmed this assessment, but the farming equipment had been modified in ways the Council could never imagine. Hidden inside innocent-looking tools were components of humanity's most advanced weapons, broken down and disguised. A simple plow contained parts for a plasma cannon. A basic food processor held the core elements of a quantum destabilizer. The fold drive components are loaded, reported her assistant, Dr. Kim. Sections 7 through 12 are ready for integration once they reach the staging area. Yuki nodded. The quantum fold drive was humanity's greatest secret, developed in complete isolation from any technology the Council knew existed. While other species traveled through hyperspace, which left detectable signatures, humans had learned to fold space itself, creating doorways that were invisible to any known scanning method. How many ships have successfully deployed now? Yuki asked. 237, Dr. Kim replied, each one carrying a complete military unit plus their equipment. The Council thinks we're sending farmers and craftspeople to our new homes. And they are farmers and craftspeople, Yuki smiled grimly. They just happen to also be some of the deadliest soldiers in human space. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. Every refugee ship carried ordinary people living ordinary lives. But mixed among the families were members of Earth's special forces, disguised as civilians. The farming equipment contained enough firepower to level cities. The evacuation was actually the largest military deployment in human history. In another part of the world, Captain Maria Santos supervised the loading of her own ship. To Council observers, she was simply a transport pilot helping with the evacuation. Her vessel appeared to be a basic cargo hauler, loaded with medical supplies for the agricultural colonies. But the medical supplies were something special. Hidden. Inside innocent-looking medicine containers were nanobots designed specifically to target alien biology. Each species in the Council had different biological weaknesses, and humanity had spent the past month learning everything they could about alien physiology. The Velthari nanobots are loaded in Container Section Alpha, reported her second-in-command, Lieutenant Morrison. "They'll disrupt crystal formation at the molecular level." "Kethvar biological scramblers in Section Beta," added Sergeant Williams. "Those will break up their hive mind connections." Maria checked her tablet. "And the Nethys dispersal agents?" "Section Gamma. They'll force gas-based life forms to solidify, effectively killing them." Maria looked around at her crew, all of them, disguised as simple medical technicians. In reality, they were some of Earth's most experienced biochemical warfare specialists. Their ship wasn't carrying medicine to heal aliens, it was carrying the tools to kill them in ways the Council had never seen before. The true genius of the plan was that none of it was technically lying. The evacuation ships really were carrying civilians to agricultural worlds. The people really were planning to start new lives as farmers and builders. The cargo really was farming equipment and medical supplies. It just happened that these farmers were also soldiers, and their equipment could be converted into weapons with a few simple modifications. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the main command center, watching status reports from around the galaxy. The evacuation had been going on for 3 weeks, and Council forces were completely relaxed. They saw exactly what they expected to see, a defeated species meekly accepting their new role. "Status report," Sarah ordered. "Phase 1 is 90% complete," reported Colonel Martinez. "All primary strike forces are in position around key Council worlds. They're maintaining perfect civilian cover. Phase 2? The weapons caches are fully distributed and hidden. Council sensors still read them as farming tools and household items. Phase 3? Lieutenant Torres looked up from his console. "Doctor, Tanaka confirms the full drive network is ready for activation. We can have simultaneous strikes on 47 worlds within 30 seconds of your order." Sarah nodded grimly. In 1 week, the Council's deadline would expire. They expected to find a disarmed, helpless Earth ready for final processing and relocation. Instead, they would discover that humanity had spent a month seeding the entire galaxy with hidden soldiers and disguised weapons. "What about the Council forces?" Sarah asked. "Still in orbit, still confident," Torres replied. "Their scans show exactly what we want them to see. As far as they know, Earth's military capability has been reduced to 0. Sarah looked at the main screen, which showed the Council ships hanging motionlessly above Earth. For 3 weeks, those ships had watched humanity apparently surrender everything that made them dangerous. The aliens had no idea they were watching the greatest deception in galactic history. "Signal all units," Sarah commanded. "Operation Trojan Protocol enters final phase in 72 hours. All teams are to complete their positioning and await the activation signal." Around the command center, officers began sending coded messages to evacuation ships scattered across the galaxy. To any observer, the messages looked like simple administrative communications about farming assignments and supply distributions. But the real message was much simpler: get ready. The war was about to begin. In orbit above Earth, Zethkar reviewed the final compliance reports. Everything was proceeding exactly as predicted. The humans had destroyed their weapons, closed their military bases, and evacuated their population without resistance. In just a few more days, Earth would be empty and ready for conversion to a nature preserve. A surprisingly easy conquest, Zethkar commented to his fellow council members. Perhaps humans are not as violent as we initially believed. The crystal being had no way of knowing that at that exact moment, over 50,000 disguised human soldiers were taking their final positions around council worlds, checking their hidden weapons, and waiting for the signal that would change the galaxy forever. The council had wanted to see what happened when they tried to cage humanity. They were about to find out. The council's victory celebration was supposed to be the grandest event in galactic history. On the crystal spires of Nexus Prime, representatives from all 12 ruling species gathered to celebrate humanity's peaceful surrender. Thousands of aliens floated, crawled, and glided through the ceremonial halls, their various forms creating a bizarre but magnificent display. Zethkar stood at the center of the great crystal amphitheater, his transparent body glowing with pride. Around him, the other council leaders basked in their success. This was the moment they would add another species to their collection of civilized peoples. Today marks a historic achievement, Zethkar announced to the assembled crowd. The last violent species in our galaxy has chosen wisdom over warfare. The humans have surrendered their weapons and accepted peaceful relocation. The crowd erupted in sounds of approval. The Kethvar clicked their mandibles in rhythm. The Nethys beings swirled their gas forms in celebratory patterns. The Zephani sparked with electrical displays of joy. High above Nexus Prime, what looked like a simple refugee transport ship drifted silently in the traffic lanes. Inside the ship, Captain Maria Santos watched the celebration through her sensors. Her vessel appeared to be carrying medical supplies to one of the agricultural worlds, just another routine evacuation flight. "All teams report ready," whispered Lieutenant Morrison, his voice barely audible even in the quiet ship. Maria checked her instruments one final time. Around the galaxy, dozens of similar ships hung in space near major council worlds. To any observer, they were harmless transports. In reality, they were humanity's first strike force, armed with weapons the Council couldn't even imagine. "Signal from Earth Command," reported Sergeant Williams. "Operation activation in 60 seconds. Maria opened a communication channel to her hidden crew. "This is Captain Santos. In 1 minute, the galaxy learns what happens when you try to cage humanity. All teams, prepare for revelation." On Nexus Prime, Zethkar continued his victory speech. "The humans have shown that even the most violent species can learn wisdom. Their children will thank us for saving them from their own destructive nature." The crowd cheered louder. They had no idea that those same humans were listening to every word, positioned around their most precious worlds, waiting for the signal to strike. In the hidden command center beneath Luna Base, Admiral Sarah Chen watched the countdown reach its final seconds. Around her, Earth's military leadership held their breath. For a month, they had played the role of defeated victims. Now it was time to show the galaxy who they really were. 10 seconds, announced Lieutenant Torres. Sarah stood and walked to the main communication panel. In a few moments, she would speak to the entire galaxy for the first time. The Council had no idea that humans had been quietly taking control of their communication networks. 5 seconds, Torres continued. 4, 3, 2, 1. Execute. The first sign of trouble came from the refugee ship above Nexus Prime. What had looked like a harmless transport suddenly split open like a flower. Hidden panels slid away to reveal weapon systems that glowed with deadly energy. The medical supplies in its cargo bay were actually the components of humanity's most advanced plasma cannons, but that was only the beginning. All around Nexus Prime, similar ships revealed themselves. What the Council had thought was routine evacuation, traffic was actually a complete military blockade. In seconds, the capital world found itself surrounded by over 30 heavily armed vessels. On the planet's surface, more surprises awaited. The humans, who had been sent to the agricultural colonies as farmers, suddenly threw off their disguises. Hidden weapon caches, disguised as farming equipment for weeks, transformed back into military hardware. Captain Santos activated her communication system and broadcast on all frequencies. Her voice reached every world in Council space, transmitted through networks the humans had been quietly infiltrating. "Attention, Galactic Council," Maria's voice rang out across the galaxy. "This is Captain Maria Santos of the Earth Defense Force. You wanted to see what happens when humanity goes to war. You're about to learn why we're the only species that turned warfare into an art form." The celebration on Nexus Prime turned to chaos. Aliens who had been cheering moments before now scrambled for cover as human ships appeared throughout their space. Council military commanders tried to understand how so many armed vessels had appeared without detection. But the real shock was yet to come. In the hidden laboratory beneath Mount Fuji, Dr. Yuki Tanaka activated humanity's greatest secret, the quantum fold drive network. Space itself began to bend and twist around 47 council worlds simultaneously. Reality folded like paper as doorways opened between distant points in the galaxy. Through these tiers in space, human strike forces poured forth like a flood. The Velthari homeworld of Crystalthon found itself under attack from directions that shouldn't exist. Human troops emerged from fold space portals directly inside their crystal cities, armed with weapons designed specifically to shatter their crystalline bodies. Commander Jake Morrison led the assault on the main crystal spire. His soldiers carried what looked like simple mining tools, but these devices could create harmonic frequencies that made Velthari crystal forms crack and crumble. Remember, we're not here to destroy, Morrison told his troops as they advanced through the panicking crystal beings. We're here to educate. The Kethvar hive worlds faced a different kind of horror. The insect-like aliens who shared thoughts through biological networks suddenly found their connections under attack. Human cyber warfare specialists, disguised as agricultural consultants for weeks, activated programs designed to scramble hive mind communications. Lieutenant Colonel Anna Petrov watched from her command post as entire Kethvar colonies fell into chaos. Without their shared consciousness, the individual bugs found themselves experiencing fear and confusion for the first time in their evolutionary history, jamming their hive frequencies across all primary colonies, reported her technical officer. They can't coordinate their defenses. Good, Anna replied. Fear is an excellent teacher. The gas giant worlds of the Nethys Collective experienced something even stranger. The beings who existed as sentient clouds of gas found themselves facing weapons that attacked their molecular cohesion. Human scientists had spent weeks learning how to force gas-based life forms into solid states. Captain David Kim led aerial squadrons through the floating cities of the Nethys homeworld. His ships released clouds of nanobots designed to compress gas into liquid, effectively killing the gaseous aliens by forcing them into a form they couldn't survive. Targeting the primary gas concentrations, Kim reported as Nethys cities began, falling from the sky like rain. They're learning what it feels like to have a solid body, but perhaps the most shocking revelation came from the electromagnetic storms of Zephan Prime. The Zephani, masters of electrical energy, found their own power grids turned against them. Human engineers had been studying their technology for weeks, learning how to reverse the flow of their energy networks. What the Zephani had built to power their cities, humans converted into planet-wide weapons. Lieutenant Sarah Kim watched from orbit as the aliens' own electrical systems began overloading, turning their power plants into massive bombs. Their own grid is destroying their cities, she reported. They built the infrastructure. We just improved it. Back on Nexus Prime, the council leaders stood in their crystal amphitheater, watching their empire crumble in real time. Screen displays showed attacks on worlds they had thought were invulnerable. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were being defeated by the primitive humans they had tried to relocate. Admiral Sarah Chen's face appeared on every screen across the galaxy. The communication networks the Council thought they controlled now belonged to Earth. Greetings, Galactic Council, Sarah said, her voice calm but deadly. 30 days ago, you gave us an ultimatum. You called us primitive. You said we needed to be civilized. You forgot one important thing. The attacks paused across all 47 worlds. Human forces held their positions but stopped firing, creating an eerie silence across the galaxy. Primitives survive by being more dangerous than everything that wants to kill them, Sarah continued. You wanted us to put away our weapons and learn to farm. What you didn't understand is that humans can turn anything into a weapon. Farming equipment, medical supplies, even your own technology. On Nexus Prime, Zethkar's crystal form flickered with disbelief. Around him, Other council members watched their perfect order collapse in the span of minutes. "You called us violent," Sarah's voice echoed through the crystal halls. "You were right, but you made one critical mistake. You assumed that violence and intelligence were opposites. You never considered that we might be very, very good at both." The revelation was complete. The galaxy's most powerful empire had been infiltrated, surrounded, and defeated by the species they thought they had conquered. And the humans had done it all while appearing to surrender peacefully. "Now," Admiral Chen continued, "let's discuss new terms. This time, we'll be writing them." The stars themselves seemed to tremble as the galaxy realized that everything had changed. The age of council rule was over. The age of humanity had begun. What followed wasn't war, as the galaxy understood it. It was the systematic dismantling of an empire that had ruled for 50,000 years, conducted by a species that had spent centuries learning how to fight impossible odds. The Velthari, crystal cities of Zeth-Karos, fell within hours. Commander Jake Morrison's forces moved through the glowing spires like shadows, their sonic weapons turning the aliens' greatest strength against them. Crystal that had stood for millennia cracked and crumbled under precisely calculated harmonic frequencies. But Morrison's greatest weapon wasn't his technology. It was his understanding of fear. The Velthari had never experienced real terror. For thousands of years, they had been the hunters, not the hunted. Now they cowered in their crystal homes as human soldiers appeared from impossible angles, emerging from fold space portals that opened directly inside their cities. "Please," begged Zethvar, a high-ranking Velthari administrator, as Morrison's team surrounded his command center. "We surrender. Take what you want." Morrison studied the trembling crystal being. "What we want is very simple. We want you to understand what you tried to do to us." He activated a device that projected holographic images around the room. The scenes showed human families being torn from their homes, forced onto evacuation ships, sent to agricultural worlds to live as servants. "This was your plan for us," Morrison said quietly. "To take everything we are and turn us into something safe, something harmless." The Velthari watched the images with growing horror. For the first time, they saw their civilizing process from the victim's perspective. We thought it was kindness," Zethvar whispered. "Did you?" Morrison asked. "Or did you just tell yourselves that because it was easier than admitting you were enslaving an entire species?" On the hive worlds of the Kethvar, a different kind of education was taking place. Lieutenant Colonel Anna Petrov's cyber warfare teams had done more than just jam the insects' hive mind communications. They had isolated individual Kethvar from their collective consciousness, forcing them to experience individuality for the first time in their evolution. The results were devastating. Kethvar, who had never had an independent thought, suddenly found themselves alone inside their own minds. The panic was absolute. "Help us," clicked Vexmar, a former hive commander who now struggled to form coherent thoughts without the collective. "Put us back. We need the connection." Anna watched the insectoid creature writhe in mental agony. Part of her felt pity, but she pushed the feeling aside. "This was necessary. This is what you wanted to do to us," she explained. "You wanted to take away what made us human and turn us into something else, something that couldn't threaten you." She activated a recording of council planning sessions, intercepted by human intelligence weeks earlier. The Kethvar's own voices filled the room as they discussed genetic modification and behavioral correction for the human species. "We were going to help you," Vexmar protested, his individual thoughts fractured and confused. "Help us become what you wanted us to be," Anna corrected. "Not what we chose to be. There's a difference." The gas giant cities of the Nethys Collective faced perhaps the cruelest lesson. Captain David Kim's atmospheric warfare specialists didn't just attack the gaseous beings, they gave them something the Nethys had never experienced: physical form. The compression weapons forced the sentient gas clouds into liquid states, trapping them in bodies they had never needed to understand. The psychological trauma was immense. Nethys 9 of Storms, a former council representative, now existed as a puddle of liquid consciousness on the floor of his former floating palace. His voice, normally a whisper of wind through gas clouds, came out as desperate bubbles. "This is torture," he gasped. Kim knelt beside the trapped being. "No, this is education. For 50,000 years, your people have forced other species into forms that suited your needs. Agricultural worlds, simple lives, limited choices." He showed the Nethys recordings of their own planning sessions. "You were going to put drugs in our food to make us more passive. You were going to alter our brain chemistry to reduce aggression. You were going to turn us into a different species entirely." The liquid Nethys quivered with understanding and horror. We thought it was for the good of the galaxy." "Whose good?" Kim asked. "Yours or ours?" But it was on the electromagnetic world of Zephyr Prime that humanity revealed its most terrifying capability: the ability to turn an enemy's greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The Zephani lived within and controlled electrical energy itself. Their cities were powered by massive energy grids that they had perfected over millennia. These grids were their pride, their art, their very essence. Human engineers had studied these systems for weeks. They understood them better than the Zephani themselves. Lieutenant Sarah Kim stood in the central power control facility, watching Zephani technicians frantically try to stop the cascade failures spreading across their planet. Every time they fixed one problem, 3 more appeared. "How are you doing this?" demanded Sparkvel, the chief energy coordinator. His electrical form flickered with panic as another city went dark. Sarah pulled up a holographic display showing the planet's complete power grid. "You built an amazing system, incredibly complex, perfectly balanced. But you made one mistake." She highlighted weak points throughout the network. "You never considered what would happen if someone understood your system better than you do." The human modifications were elegant in their simplicity. Instead of destroying the Zephani power grid, they had improved it, made it more efficient, more responsive, more powerful. The only problem was that the improvements were designed to overload every safety system the Zephani had built. "You're destroying our entire civilization," Sparkvel said. "No," Sarah replied. "We're showing you what you tried to do to ours. You wanted to take our technology and make it safe, make it harmless, make it serve your purposes instead of ours." She activated recordings of Zephani planning sessions. "You were going to study our weapons technology and then modify it so it couldn't hurt you. You were going to take our space drives and limit their range so we couldn't explore beyond the worlds you chose for us." The electrical being's form dimmed with understanding. "We were protecting the galaxy." "You were protecting yourselves," Sarah corrected. "From competition, from change, from anything that might challenge your control." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. Species that had ruled through superior technology found themselves facing an enemy that turned their own advantages against them. The humans didn't just fight the Council's forces. They educated them. Every attack came with a lesson. Every victory included an explanation. The humans wanted their enemies to understand not just that they were beaten, but why they deserved to be beaten. But perhaps the most effective human weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their mercy. On world after world, Council forces prepared for the final slaughter. They had seen their defenses shattered, their cities conquered, their populations scattered. They waited for the humans to finish what they had started. Instead, something unprecedented happened. The humans stopped. On Crystalthon, Commander Morrison's forces established field hospitals for wounded Velthari. On the Kethvar hive worlds, Anna Petrov's teams began working to restore hive communications for those who requested it. On Nethys Prime, David Kim's specialists developed technology to help trapped gas beings return to their natural forms. The effect on Council morale was devastating. They had prepared for death. They had not prepared for kindness from an enemy they had tried to destroy. "Why?" Zeth Kar asked Admiral Chen during the first ceasefire negotiation. The crystal being's form was cracked and dim, his voice barely a whisper. "We tried to enslave your species. Why are you helping our wounded?" Sarah looked at the defeated alien leader. "Because that's what humans do. We fight when we have to. We show mercy when we can. It's what you never understood about us." She gestured to the screens showing human medics working alongside alien doctors across dozens of worlds. "You saw our capacity for violence and assumed that was all we were. You never bothered to learn about our capacity for healing." The crystal being flickered with confusion. "But we attacked you. We tried to destroy everything you are." "Yes," Sarah agreed, "and we stopped you. But now that you're not a threat anymore, why would we keep hurting you?" For the first time in 50,000 years, the Galactic Council faced an enemy that was more dangerous than they were, but also more merciful. The combination was more terrifying than pure violence ever could have been. The humans had proven they could destroy the Council's empire in a matter of hours. But they had also proven they chose not to. That choice would haunt the galaxy's former rulers far longer than any defeat. 6 months after the Council's ultimatum, the galaxy looked completely different. The great crystal towers of Nexus Prime still reached toward the stars, but now they housed a new kind of government. The reformed Galactic Assembly operated from the same chambers where the Council had once ruled, but the discussions inside were nothing like before. Admiral Sarah Chen sat at the head of the circular council chamber, but she wasn't sitting on a throne. The humans had built a simple table where all species could meet as equals. Around that table sat representatives from the former council races, along with dozens of species that had been kept under council control for millennia. The Andromedan. "Refugees request permission to settle in the Outer Rim territories," reported Ambassador Webb, reading from a datapad. "Their homeworld was destroyed by a solar flare 300 years ago, and they've been living on generation ships ever since." Zeth Kar, his crystal form still bearing cracks from the war, leaned forward. "In the old system, refugees were assigned to whatever world the Council deemed appropriate. They had no choice in the matter. This isn't the old system," Sarah replied, gently. "The Andromedans can choose where they want to live. We'll help them find worlds that suit their needs." The crystal being flickered with something that might have been confusion. Even 6 months later, the concept of choice still seemed foreign to him. Sarah understood his confusion. The former council species were struggling to adapt to a galaxy where they didn't control everything. For 50,000 years, they had made every decision for every other species. Now, they had to learn how to cooperate instead of command. But they were learning. Slowly, sometimes painfully, but they were learning. The transformation wasn't just political. It was personal. On Crystalthon, Velthari engineers worked alongside human scientists to develop new technologies. The crystal beings had spent millennia perfecting energy manipulation, but they had never thought to combine it with human mechanical engineering. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood in the joint research facility, watching a Velthari named Lumshar demonstrate a new power storage system. The crystal being's natural energy-focusing abilities, combined with human quantum fold technology, had created something neither species could have built alone. "The efficiency is incredible," Yuki said, studying the readings. "We're getting nearly perfect energy transfer." Lumshar's crystal body glowed with pride. "Your fold space principles solve the heat dissipation problems we've struggled with for centuries. It was a scene being repeated across the galaxy. Species that had never been allowed to share knowledge were discovering what they could accomplish together. The HFY's biological expertise, combined with human medical knowledge, was producing cures for diseases that had plagued both species. The Nethys gas form engineering, merged with human atmospheric science, was terraforming worlds faster than anyone had thought possible. But perhaps the most significant change was in how conflicts were resolved. When disputes arose between species, they no longer waited for the Council to decide their fate. They talked to each other. Captain Maria Santos, now serving as Earth's first interspecies mediator, sat in a conference room on the former HFY hive world of Nest Prime. Across from her, two species that had been enemies for 1,000 years were trying to work out their differences. The Quilari, a reptilian species, and the Vorthak, who looked like intelligent plants, had been fighting over water rights on 3 border worlds. Under the old council system, the matter would have been decided by bureaucrats who had never seen the disputed territories. The Quilari settlements were established first, argued Speaker Histal, his scales shifting color with emotion. We have historical claim to the water sources. Historical claim means nothing if the water is being wasted, countered Rootsinger. Thornwing, her leafy appendages rustling with agitation. Your people use 3 times more water than they need. Maria listened to both sides, then pulled up holographic displays of the disputed worlds. What if we're approaching this wrong? Instead of fighting over who gets the water, why don't we figure out how to make more water? Both aliens looked confused. Under the council system, resources were always limited and had to be rationed. The idea of creating more resources was revolutionary. Human atmospheric processors can extract water from planetary air, Maria continued. Vorthak bioengineering can create plants that naturally purify groundwater. Quilari geological knowledge can help us find new underground sources. She gestured to the displays showing the 3 worlds. Working together, you could turn these border worlds into garden paradises with more water than both species could ever use. The concept was simple, but it represented a fundamental shift in thinking. Instead of competing for limited resources, species were learning to cooperate to create unlimited resources. This philosophy was spreading throughout the galaxy, and it was changing everything. On Earth, President Vasquez stood in her office, looking out at the alien ships that still orbited the planet. But these weren't the threatening council vessels from 6 months ago. These were trade ships, research vessels, and diplomatic transports. Representatives from dozens of species came to Earth to learn about human technology, culture, and most importantly, human methods of conflict resolution. The latest reports from the Outer Rim, said her aide, handing her a data pad. The Zephani colonies have successfully negotiated a power-sharing agreement with the local inhabitants. No council intervention required. Elena smiled. And the Nethys terraforming project? Ahead of schedule. They're working with 3 other species to create atmospheric conditions that can support all their life forms simultaneously. It was remarkable how quickly things had changed. 6 months ago, different species had lived in isolation, controlled by a council that kept them separated and dependent. Now they were learning to solve their own problems and help each other grow. But perhaps the most important change was happening in the hearts and minds of the former council species themselves. Zethkar walked through the crystal gardens of Nexus Prime, now rebuilt as a place where all species could meet and learn from each other. The gardens were full of life forms that had never been allowed to interact under the old system. Human children played alongside young HFY, their laughter mixing with the insects' happy clicking sounds. Nethys gas forms danced through the air, while Zephani electrical beings created light shows for everyone to enjoy. It's beautiful, said a voice behind him. Zethkar turned to see Admiral Chen approaching, her expression peaceful as she watched the scene. I never imagined it could be like this. the crystal being admitted. For so long, we believed that different species had to be kept apart to maintain peace. Sarah nodded. That's what many humans believe too, at different points in our history. We learned the hard way that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the children play. Finally, Zethkar spoke again. "I must ask you something that has troubled me for months," he said. "When you defeated us, you could have destroyed everything. You could have taken revenge for what we tried to do to your species. Why didn't you?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "Because revenge would have made us just like the old council. It would have proven that the only way to rule is through fear." She gestured to the gardens around them. "This is better. A galaxy where different species work together instead of being controlled by any one group, where problems are solved through cooperation instead of domination." Zethkar's crystal form pulsed with understanding. "You didn't just defeat us, you showed us a better way." "We showed you a human way," Sarah corrected gently. "But every species has to find their own path to peace. Our job is just to make sure they have the freedom to find it." The conversation was interrupted by an alert from Sarah's communicator. She frowned as she read the message. "What is it?" Zethkar asked, noting her expression. "New contact on the outer rim," Sarah replied, her voice becoming serious. "A species called the Dominion. They're demanding that the primitive local government surrender to their authority." The crystal being's form flickered with alarm. "Another invasion force?" Sarah smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "They don't know about the changes here. They think they're dealing with the same old galaxy." She activated her communicator. "This is Admiral Chen to all assembly forces. We have a first contact situation developing. Prepare for diplomatic engagement, with military backup." As alerts began sounding across Nexus Prime, Sarah turned back to Zethkar. "Want to help us welcome our new visitors?" The crystal being's form brightened with something that looked suspiciously like eagerness. "It would be my pleasure to show them what we've learned about peaceful cooperation." In the distance, the first Dominion ships were entering the galaxy, expecting to find the same collection of isolated, council-controlled species they had detected months ago during their long-range surveys. Instead, they were about to encounter something unprecedented, a united galaxy that had learned to defend itself through cooperation rather than domination. A galaxy that had been taught by humanity that the greatest strength came not from ruling others, but from working together as equals. The Dominion was about to learn the same lesson the Council had.